Hello, and welcome back to today's American Flyer Trains for the continuation of the rebuild and restoration of 4611, the New York Central freight train from 1946 and 1947, featuring 322, which was made from 1946 to 1948 as a locomotive power, which is a 464 Hudson. The one we'll be rebuilding is a Type 2. It also featured smoke and tender, choo-choo, and a 4-position reverse unit and an operating headlamp. Already complete in the rebuild is the 630 Reading caboose. This is a Type 6, which is really just a Type 5 with illumination. It was available in the production line of A.C. Gilbert from 1946 to 1952. And its rebuild and restoration are complete, and it is ready for production service. Also complete in the rebuild project is this 629 Missouri Pacific stock car, first introduced in 1946 and actually continued in the production line until 1953. This is a Type 5 with a die-cast frame. Added to the order is this 716 American Flyer Line side dump car, which was sold from 1946 to 1951. It was also part of catalog set, or the train from catalog set 4611. It was missing from the customer order, but I'm going to add it back and provide this to the customer. This one is a Type 1, and it is unique because it has the between the truck pickup, power pickups. That, of course, requires a special track section. This track section has the power pickup on inner rails. It does not pick up its power from the actual rail head, and it was made in 1946 in that era, and accommodated, and also in the 47, and accommodated any car, any operating car that had these inside the truck pickups that you see here. This one was completely rebuilt. It was almost totally rusted, and you'll probably see some my earlier videos when I restored this. Also completed in the rebuild of this project, 4611, is the tender of the 322 locomotive, which contains smoke in tender. Well, that brings us to the rebuild of the 322 Hudson locomotive, a 464. We're going to start with the 322 locomotive by documenting all the known issues, which includes rust on the handrails and the piping. It also includes a crosshead assembly, which is bent upward. That's this right here. And probably most seriously, and probably the root cause of a lot of these problems, is right here. And that is the piston rod, which is this one right here, is bent at that point right there, leading up to the crosshead assembly. It's probably what has bent the crosshead assembly, because it is installed on the inside of the spacing washer, which is right here. It should be installed right here, leading directly into the crosshead assembly. Having been installed on the inside, it's bent the piston rod. At the rear of the train, the jack panel is crushed in that location right there, right where one of the power cables enters. So I don't know that I'm going to try to rebuild this with any kind of bonding material, or if I'm going to replace it, but it is going to be one of the things that I'll be sharing later on, some interesting facts about it. On the left side, handrails and piping, again, are rusted. Don't know how I will address that. Could be that they will simply be washed. It could be that I will scrape them down and get rid of the rust and then put a light coat of black paint on them. Again, the crosshead assembly is bent even worse than the right-hand side, because the unit won't even stay between the tracks, because the tracks are spread apart, because the piston rod, which is this one right here, again is installed on the inside of the space washer instead of the outside, and it has bent it right at the point of where the screw is on the driver wheel, right there. and it probably collides with it, which is not going to be something we want to move forward with. We've got to correct that in order for this train to be operative. Also on this side, the eccentric crank assembly, this one right here, eccentric crank assembly, this rod right here is bent inward, probably from just rough handling. On the front, just some rust on handrails, both here and just above the assembly for the pilot wheels. And that brings us to the bottom of the locomotive, which is going to provide us with some of the more challenging things to do, because one of which is because this pilot truck assembly right here is bent inward and up into the train, probably from a previous drop. I don't know if the pilot truck is going to ride flat. These are not easy to bend because they will fracture. How do we know that? I've done it before on my own train. So I never recommend on a customer's train that we try to bend these. However, there are times when the bending is so severe from probably a previous drop that I've recommended to customers that this be replaced. If the pilot truck will ride on the rails, then this bending won't have much impact. We just want to make sure it doesn't hit the chassis and that it moves laterally very freely. At the factory or through an authorized service dealer, these pins were installed on all driver wheels, two sides, opposite sides on each driver wheel. The pins were put in to keep the rim, the metal rim, from sliding on this plastic, and thus it not having any grip. So imagine the center of the wheel spinning and the rim staying in place. Those were put in because the plastic was shrinking and not making good contact with the rim. And when they inserted these, they naturally introduced a fracture point in the metal. It's weakened because of the pin has been put in. All rims are going to have to be replaced. Maybe the wheels and maybe the plastic liner or insulating wheel. We don't know until I get all these apart. If there's any hint of fracturing, they're going to have to be replaced because they can just fall off at any time if they have that fracture. So moving forward with these challenges, my principle and techniques are going to remain the same, and that is I'm going to run this piece back through the steps of original assembly to establish a known baseline and a standard, and to identify common and challenging hidden problems. Then rebuild, hopefully for another 50 years of service supported by just standard maintenance, kind of like an automobile. This is going to give us an opportunity to look at some of the common problems that are really hidden in these trains but have high impact, and they'll be highlighted by looking at the commutator, the jack panel, which I just pointed out, and you might say, gee, what could it be that's hidden in a jack panel? Well, stay tuned and I'll show you. Even the position of the cable and wire harnesses, thrust washers, the reverse unit, drum and fingerboards, stream driver rims, which we just talked about, the driver wheel lateral movement, that is the wheel's ability to move in and out on the axle freely, which is not good recipe for moving forward, and then driver wheel core, and then pilot wheel bounce has an impact on this train. So when I rebuild this one, and I'm also going to do it moving forward and over time, I'm going to add to this video information that's going to assist and maybe quell some of the unsubstantiated approaches and focuses that I see, which are kind of like bubblegum or aim with the thumb and then shoot from the hip approach. I've heard several times, and I'm not being critical, this is just the way it is, not from this owner, but from others, that, hey Dave, I think the solenoid, say in rolling stock or accessories, is bad and needs to be replaced, or the armature needs to be replaced, or the fields need to be rewound, or the motor is gone, it's burned up, I saw it smoking, and many things like that. And I have yet to be able, not to be able to rebuild one of those and get it back into like new operation. Now that's not to say that things don't go bad in armatures and fields, but that I think it's the exception rather than the rule. All that something like that, like it's smoking, tells me is that at some point in its life it's had a higher than recommended temperature, likely caused by a simple short, and once that's corrected, everything else can be brought back to life. Mr. Barker's got a lot of good information in his book, by the way, if you're into rewinding fields and armatures and solenoids. And Hannon's book also provides a tremendous amount of technical information about those, which we're going to be leveraging a little bit in Hannon's book to let me show you how to diagnose an armature. Let's get started. Thanks again for watching Dave's American Flyer Trains. So long, everyone.